Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. I want to give you a quick little update about the general situation in Germany as it has been unfolding in the past weeks where I took my little break. And especially today I want to focus on more or less this civil rights, basic rights, health measures situation, the China bug situation. As you might remember from before my break, German politicians are still saying that they are in favor of mandatory jabs. That is from the leading parties, the FDP, the Green Party and the SPD. And our chancellor also says he is fighting for that goal. But the government doesn't really come out with a draft for such a law. But the chancellor or the government said that parliamentarians in our Bundestag, they should just self-organize independently into teams or groups of their liking in order to work out something. So that is of course not how work in a parliament normally works. That is why we have a government and that's why we have committees and such. But that is also of course because he doesn't really want to get his hands dirty. He doesn't want to be the guy who told us to do this and that. He says, oh, you figure it out. So this is how he can preemptively avoid blame in the end, or avoid responsibility, even though he's the chancellor. You might call it clever, but yeah, I don't know. The other thing is that now with the new variant around, the general mood and the general way to look at this issue is changing a little bit in Germany. To be more clear, people have expected large numbers of infections, a high infection rate, and we actually do have that. But they also feared, or the fear porn that was going around was that, the usual, right? Like the hospitals would be completely overcrowded and that we would have a huge death toll, etc. None of that has happened so far, as it also hasn't happened with Omicron in other countries. So why would it happen in Germany? That was, or that is what many people, including me, have been saying from the very beginning. And now that we have week after week with nothing much happening, many people have a runny nose, yeah, but that's about it. And people are starting to question that. And also the parties and the politicians, they are positioning themselves a little differently now. They put out vague statements and they say that we should consider opening up now. And the question is, do we still need this mandatory jabbing, or like Austria is planning it right now, or does that do more harm than good, etc. So one can see tiny, well, in the beginning tiny, now not so tiny anymore, signals that the general way to look at things is changing in the country. Let's see if that is enough in the end. Even Söder from Bavaria has said that we need to relax these measures now. But I think, it's unclear to me, to be honest, if they still want mandatory jabs or not, which is, for me at least, is the main issue here. That is not really clear to me in the case of Söder and the CSU. And the other thing is that our health minister, Mr. Lauterbach, who is, many people had such high hopes for him because he is a doctor, a medical doctor himself, and I don't think he ever worked as one, not as a hospital doctor at least. And so they had high hopes that at last we have a health minister who is an expert himself and he understands the field, and that's why everything becomes better now. Well, He is often making arguments based on the recent study that came out. Of course, in the medical field, you always find a study for something. There are always 5 different studies coming out each day, and they all contradict each other. Normally, it's just like the field of nutrition. It's not really a clear science, as I said. Or a hard science, especially not a hard science, in no way. And that is why that is very difficult. So what he did, for example, I give you an example, and this put him under a lot of pressure in Germany. He said that if you had a positive test, right, and then you recover, so you are a state-approved, recovered person and have, as such a person, some acquired natural immunity, then he said that this natural immunity that humans use for as long as humans exist, actually how all animals fight off diseases with this immunity, that is inferior in nature to the artificial immunity that you get from a pharmaceutical product. And that is why he said that the status that you get, like I have no idea, I'm not part of this group, but apparently you get some kind of a QR code thing or some form from the government, some document that proves that you are a recovered person, and that's why you are treated then in these 2G or 3G rules for establishments like restaurants and stuff. You are treated as if you were fully jabbed, yeah, as a recovered person. But he said that the duration for which this status should be valid is reduced to 3 months after the infection and or the positive test, let's say. And the thing is that this status only starts being in effect from 2 weeks after this test. So that means it's only around about 2.5 months. That is the status. And that is, of course, ridiculous. And there is no scientific basis for that, even though he claimed that. But it is very clear that when you're a recovered person, your immunity is just as good or even better than if you are jabbed. That is at least what I have heard. Anyway, but that's neither here nor there. It is very easy to see what he wants to do with that. He wants to force more people to get this pharmaceutical product into their bodies. That is what he's trying to do. And all the other countries around us, yeah, they have this status for 6 months. Yeah? So if you're recovered in any other European country, I think it's 6 months, and I think in Switzerland or something it's even 12 months. But they all say, follow the science, yeah? And the science in Germany apparently says something else than in all the other countries around us. So science is in Germany, yeah, the virus is different somehow. Yeah, it's not the same as in Austria or Italy or Spain. No. Here, when you're recovered, you're only good for 2 months or 3 or 2.5, and in other countries it's 6 months. But it's science, right? So that is bad. And what didn't really help is the fact that in the German Bundestag they also have their own rules there, right? And this status is still valid for 6 months. For the people who sit in the Bundestag. But for everyone else in Germany, it's 2.5 months or 3, however you want to count that. So that made a lot of people angry, and now he has to do some hardcore damage control. So I should probably be saying more specifically about Mr. Söder and how that shows that the cracks are starting to show in the establishment. That is that Mr. Söder in Bavaria, he said that he does not want to enforce the mandatory jabs for the health sector that have already been decided on, that are already law from the beginning of March, I think it should start. And he said this law is horrible, it's not enforceable, and he refuses to enforce this in Bavaria. And that caused some outrage from the federal government, for example. But Mr. Söder was always in favor of these things, and I think he was also in favor of that law, and now he says he won't enforce it. And also in the media, you can tell how certain journalists and certain newspapers are starting to put more and more articles in there that criticize the government for some measures, or that doubt if these things like mandatory jabs are really enforceable, or are they really still necessary, etc., etc. So you can really see that one can say the rats are leaving the sinking ship or something like that, or some people have understood that a major part of the public, some of course, some will never get it, but a major part of the public cannot be fooled for too long, not forever, and they think that a critical mass of people who woke up, so to speak, will be reached soon, so they're getting a little bit afraid and they're starting to criticize these measures now. But by and large, one can still say that especially when one looks at the governors of the federal states and our federal government, that compared to the nations around us, to the countries around us, even in the EU, you can see that Germany is not opening up like other countries, and we still have very strict rules compared to our neighbors, and it seems like they're all opening up and they all change their policy, and we just keep on marching in the same old rut. Maybe that is one of our features. That is the general situation from Germany as I would describe it as of now. I will keep you informed. Thanks for listening till the end. Servus, Kameraden.